Once upon a time in a far forgotten wood, there was a vast legend that all understood. If one touched the bright moon high in the sky, it would grant great power, but not to all who try. If a creature was clever with courage and might, the power could be harnessed, if the attempt was just right. Failure was common. Very few could succeed, as many of them were driven solely by greed. Those trying to capture the moon for their gain would meet its wrath and suffer its pain. The myth of the moon is still but a mystery, one left untouched for all of history. Once upon a time, there was a shy little bunny in a forest long since forgotten. They fell in love with the beauty of the world. Each night they hopped from tree to tree, hoping for a view of the sky above and the stars that rested there. On an evening no different from the rest, the bunny emerged from their home deep underground, eager to explore the world once again. They knew the sun would soon rise, and so they hurried to admire the moon. As the bunny darted through the woods, careful and quick, their foot crunched loudly upon a small brittle twig. The poor young rabbit looked on with fright as the moon above them shattered, and all semblance of the great glowing moon was swallowed by the night sky. Then, in the darkness, specks of light appeared. These shards of the moon tumbled downward to the mortal world and across the very forest the young bunny called home. Without a question, without even a doubt, the bunny knew that something must be done. They had stepped on a branch and broken the moon into tiny pieces and knew that it was their responsibility to fix it. Buried in darkness, they cast aside their fear, determined to do whatever they must to return the beauty of the moon. The first constellation was the foolish fox, whose tragic flaw was thinking inside the box. Years ago, a greedy king heard the myth of the moon and sought its power for himself. He called upon the fox, a loyal member of his royal court, to venture into the great beyond and retrieve it. The fox barreled his way through the forest, paws creaking and cracking over the dense thicket floor. His mission? A journey to the place where the sky ceases to roam and return with the jewel of the night sky. After days of travel that saw his sharp claws worn to mere pebbles on the rock, he arrived at the horizon. The sun tucked itself to sleep, trading out with the moon which climbed steadily into the sky. The fox yipped and chased after the moon, jaws eager to clamp down on its pearly prize. But the foolhardy fox did not realize that the moon was not so easily won, and his jaws closed down on evening air. His leaps brought him no closer, and his feet eventually gave out under him. He fell to the ground, and he returned to the king, the moon still hanging in the far-off heights of night. wolf went wrong by being too wary, as they found the world around them far too scary. The fox, having failed to catch his mark, was soon replaced by the courtier wolf. They padded across the path plowed by the fox, much more cautious in their stride. After some time, they reached their quarry along the sky's end. Not even the grass behind which they hid noticed their presence as the wolf lay in wait. Soon the day's end came as well, the sun yawning and tagging out with the moon, which began its faithful ascent into the sky. Ears and nostrils flaring, the wolf stood up, crouching as they prepared to pounce. But their paws hesitated, wary of whatever fate may wait them if they took chase. They stood poised in indecision as the moon crept further and further away until it was much too high for them to grasp. They let out a mournful howl that echoed across the night, reaching the moon and becoming swept up in its orbit. The wolf, too, had failed in their mission. The brutal bear's method was always to fight, unaware that violence could never be right. After the failure of the wolf, the king sent the mighty bear to obtain the moon. The king had begun to lose patience with his court, but knew that the bear would use all of her strength. As the day's sun wore away, she set out from the castle, traveling through the vast forest towards the horizon. The amber sky faded to inky black, and still she traveled onwards. She lumbered towards the setting moon, beady eyes focused on her target. The bear waited until the moon hung low in the sky, and then reared up, reaching as high as she could. Her vicious claws slashed skyward, thrashing at the moon to no avail. She brought down her paws with all her might in a powerful stomp, but still, the moon refused to fall. Defeated, the bear had to return to the king, empty-handed. The eagle's greed stretched from his beak to his wings, fully convinced he was the best of kings. His royal court had failed him, and with his need for the moon's power growing ever greater, the Eagle King took to the skies. Two great flaps of his mighty wings sent the trees shivering with the chilly wind the smallest creatures could feel from deep within their burrows. He climbed higher and higher into the sky, ice gathering on his wings as the air around him got colder. As he approached, the soft glow of the moon cast its light on the eagle's face. He reached out to touch it, but as he did, he felt no rush of power. He had reached the moon once before he had become king, and felt the power it gave. In fact, this power was what allowed him to become king in the first place. When he first ascended to the throne, he was a kind, compassionate ruler. But, as time went on, he became consumed by his own greed, and the power of the moon began to abandon him. Desperate to regain what he lost, the eagle began to peck at the moon, hoping that more power laid underneath. As he dug deeper, cracks began to form. The eagle noticed the cracks growing, but he continued his pecking, becoming more and more forceful. Suddenly, the moon completely shattered. One by one, each of the 8 shards fell to the ground. The eagle dove, trying to catch even one, but each shard eluded him. Even though the moon was shattered, it still would not let the eagle steal its power. He watched as his court and soldiers turned to stars until he, too, became a constellation. The brave little bunny, their journey complete, was rewarded at last for their marvelous feat. For through them, though they were incredibly shy, the moon was brought back to its home in the sky. But their strength did not come from their brawn nor their size. In fact, something different allowed them to rise. The bunny was kind, quite loyal and smart, and above all else had a brave little heart. So this tale of the bunny, moon, and stars is told o'er campfires from near and far, shared in the kingdom among dances and songs, under the bright moon, back where it belongs. And thus the little bunny defeated the great eagle king who had so coveted the moon's power. From him, they took the last shard of the shattered moon and climbed to the very top of the castle spire. There they untied their bag and took out all 8 of the glowing fragments. The fragments shimmered and twinkled, light dancing across their dusty surfaces. The bunny marveled at their beauty and gazed up at the twilight sky. "Here," thought the little bunny, "this is for you. It doesn't belong to me and should never belong to any one creature." Ever so gently, the bunny held up each fragment and watched as they floated, one by one, up towards the sky. The shards spun and twirled around each other, rising above the little bunny, above the old evergreen trees and the vast castle towers. A bright light flashed through the sky, and as the bunny looked upwards, they saw the moon had returned above. Gray-blue moonlight shone across the lands, illuminating all in its beauty as it once did years before, and as it would for years to come.